Good evening and welcome to the June 23rd, 2021 work session of the Penfield Town Board. I'll welcome everyone in the audience and the board members that are here or soon to be here or just arrived. I would like to read into the record our official notice. I hope that this is, if not the last, one of the last times I have to do this. Due to COVID-19 virus and the closing of town operations consistent with the governor's executive orders, the June 23rd, 2021 Town Board work session meeting will be held remotely via Zoom. This meeting will also be video recorded, broadcast live via the town's website at penfield.org, on the town's government access cable channel 1303, and on streaming media device that's Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire. Please search Penfield TV in your your device app store. This is a free app. The meeting will later be transcribed. Any questions tonight regarding video coverage, please contact Penfield TV at 340-8661. That's at 8661, 340-8661. I'm hoping that's the last time I see that notice. I'm going to ask our clerk, Sue Scheidt, who's with us, if she would please call the roll.
Excuse me, Drawe.
Here.
Cole.
Here.
LaFountain.
Present.
Moore. Absent. Ockenden.
Here.
All here.
Okay, thank you. This evening, I would like to make everyone aware from a town staff standpoint, Town Engineer, Planning Director Mark Valentine is with us. We have Mr. Costello, Development Services Director. In the back, RIT Tait, who is our Director of Public Works. And next to him, Tim Masterton, who is our Parks Director, Parks Foreman. Thank you. And we'll get a chance when we get into our first item. We'll have the rest of the folks here in the auditorium introduced, and I'll do that via Mr. Spencer. We do have the June 9th, 2021 minutes before us, and Board, I would recognize a motion of approval for those minutes.
I'll move them, Mr. Supervisor. Second.
Moved by Councilperson Drawe, seconded by Councilperson Cole. Discussion? See no discussion. I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Drawe.
Aye.
Cole.
Here.
LaFountain.
Aye.
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 Ockenden.
Aye.
4 ayes.
Okay, monthly reports I think are all in. Thank you to department heads for doing that. This evening we do not have any public hearings. We do have a number of guests. Our first guest is Andy Spencer with BME, and Andy has been working with us as part of our master plan. This evening there's a presentation from Andrew and the team he has with him. I'm going to ask him before he gets started if he would do a quick introduction for the record.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Supervisor. With me this evening from the Greater Rochester Disc Golf Club, Jason Phelps, who will be running the slideshow for us, Mr. Tim Bayer, and Mr. Dave Kopp.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And with that, the floor is yours, unless a member of staff would like to add any words of wisdom, pearls of wisdom, or otherwise.
I think we're all set, Mr. Supervisor.
All right, then, Andrew, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to come before you this evening. I've been working together with the Rochester Disc Club to come up with a plan for an 18-hole disc golf course on the Shadow Pines property. And over the course of the past 5 or 6 weeks, I've met with a number of different individuals at the course and met with this group probably 2 or 3 times, I believe. And we've come up with what we believe is a relatively decent course layout that will provide opportunities for disc golfers at all levels to be able to enjoy. I'm going to allow them to kind of speak to their expertises regarding the presentation that we're going to give to you this evening. And I'll provide a few closing statements and kind of the next steps that we see and would ask the board to consider taking to see if we can make this disc golf course into fruition and bring it into fruition.
Okay.
So with that,
I would let the record show that in addition to these gentlemen, there were others that you did speak with as well. And you actively sought input feedback from a number of different individuals. And so I want to make sure that that's part of the record as well.
Yeah, that is correct. We did, I did walk the site with the first individuals that gave you a presentation about a month or so ago, I believe. We did walk the site with them as well, tried to coordinate with them to bring them into the fold. They have decided that they would like to step away from this and allow this group to carry forward.
Okay, great. All right, with that.
So I think with that, in terms of Dave Kopp.
Thank you for having us here tonight. My name's Dave Kopp. I'm the president of the Greater Rochester Disc Golf Club. So we're an organization of roughly 120 to 150 paying members a year. We charge $25 annually for membership. Most of that cost goes back into liability insurance, and then the rest we put forth into improving the courses in the area or getting towns to establish courses if there aren't any in the area. So disc golf, I believe, was brought up at the April meeting, and you learned a little bit about it, but it's one of the fastest growing sports in the country. We have a few hundred local players that compete on the professional to amateur level competitively, and there are thousands of players in the area that are just recreational players. Ellison course right around, or Ellison Park has a course right around the corner from here. That is one of the busiest courses in the area. You can go there most days when the baskets are in from April to November, and you're going to find a full course, if not people waiting to tee off at the beginning. Disc golf's a great opportunity for a lot of people in that it's a very low cost of entry. You can buy just a single or a couple discs to get started. It's not like ball golf. It's also much easier to maintain. When it comes to a park standpoint, you're just maintaining it like you would a normal park. It's not the watering, the chemicals, everything that comes into maintaining a ball golf course. So, Rochester itself has a pretty big history of disc golf. We were home to the first tournament in the world. So we hosted what was then called the American Flying Disc Open, 1974. We've since then been hosting, it'll be the 48th Rochester Flying Disc Open this year. It's been renamed, but it's the oldest tournament. We're coming up on the 50th, which is a big event for both the Professional Disc Golf Association, which is the large national organization that oversees both professional and amateur players. Many people have what's known as a PDGA number, just a way of kind of keeping track of when you join the organization. We are home in Rochester to number 23, is one of the oldest members. My PDGA number is in the 100,000s. There are now players, just over the last few years, there's now 190,000 plus members in the PDGA. So that is both amateur professional organization that oversees disc golf around the world. So this actually weekend, the World Championships are happening out in Ogden, Utah. So there's a lot going on with disc golf. I know we would definitely like to see, as a local organization, Penfield get included into that mix of towns that have a course and have a premier course in the area. So that's one of our goals as we kind of work through this. I know the former vice president, Jamie Rockefeller, was one of the ones who reached out to the Land Advisory Committee to originally get disc golf talked about in the town of Penfield, and we're glad that you're continuing those conversations. Let's see. Other than that, I mean, let's see. I'll introduce.
All right. So my name's Jason Phelps. I'll go over kind of our course design process. So in designing the course for Shadow Pines, the GRDGC members, along with Andrew, have walked the property dozens of times since February, alone and as a team, to inform our recommendations. So we certainly took into consideration the conceptual map as a starting point, and we actually additionally had conversations with Dave Thomas, Gary and Craig Rand, the group that presented to you guys in April.
Right.
And we started noting like the beautiful parts of the property, the park, and began looking for the best disc golf holes on the property, try to link them together. Compared our notes to arrive at the consensus layout you'll see this evening. So one of the guiding principles was to develop a course that will be interesting and inviting to novice through the most advanced level players in the area. As a sport grows, we want all players to be welcomed, entertained, challenged, and enjoy the beauty of Shadow Pines through disc golf. Throughout the process, we've focused on creating a safely designed course that limits any risk to disc golfers, other park users, and park neighbors. To verify the quality of the hole designs and the safety of the course, the club is prepared to organize multiple temporary course events, including a wide spectrum of players, so that we can kind of verify that our layout is truly safe and accommodating to all players. We carefully reviewed the existing regional disc golf options. We aim to fill the gaps in availability in eastern Monroe County and to capture the characteristics of courses that are appreciated by players. Ellison is the only 18-hole course within 10 miles of Shadow Pines. It is well regarded by the community, as Dave said, having had a region-leading estimated 30,000 rounds played last year. But having only a single set of tees and baskets, it falls into a place where it is especially challenging for novice players and relatively easy for experienced players. During the summer weekends, it can get overcrowded, as Dave mentioned, and the baskets are removed from November to April to accommodate winter activities at the park, like sledding, skiing, and so on. It leaves a pretty big hole in the disc golf accessibility in this area during those months, which I don't know if we've mentioned yet, is a year-round sport, right? People are playing even in the snow, right? Tie a little ribbon to your disc, you can find it, right? So North Ponds and Webster is a 9-hole short course that is great for beginners or for those needing a quick round or to practice their short games. However, its use pales in comparison to other area courses. The two highest rated courses and most used other than Ellison in the Rochester area are Widener Park and Chili, which I think was discussed in April, and Parma and Spencerport. These courses are more challenging than Ellison in both distance and technicality. While the club is planning improvements, they currently lack inviting novice tee pads. We want to create a course where the quality of the tee pads on both sets of tees are of equal quality, right? So we're not favoring any groups, right? We want everybody to be welcome. And being on the far west side of the county, those courses are not particularly convenient for Penfield or neighboring residents, right? So I want to hand it off to Tim Baer to introduce our layout.
And before Tim takes over, I'll just reflect the Ellison so I don't get in trouble with the person that I look up to because of his stature, Supervisor Bill Maley in Brighton. The Ellison site is in the town of Brighton. So just an FYI and a shout out. I don't want to get a call from Bill. I don't want to get a call from Bill in the morning
Appreciate that.
to say, geez, I was watching your town board, which he regularly does, and I noticed that there was an error, on that slide. So just a FYI. And Bill, if you're watching, I got your back.
The Brighton side of Ellison.
Right.
We do have
Gotcha.
some, but that's not the part.
Thank you.
All right, Tim, it's all you.
Yeah, I'm Tim Baer. I teach disc golf and have for a number of years. I also run a putting league. I play in national tournaments on a regular basis. So I was one of the folks that walked the courses. And one of the things we wanted to do was, in looking at the courses in the area, make a course that would fit well with the existing courses and also have some advantages. So going from least skill playing a course to more skilled, North Ponds is probably one of the easiest courses. So a skilled player would have to perhaps start there. And the red for the front 9 for the course we laid out is more difficult than a North Ponds course And then from there, the skill level would perhaps be going up to playing at Ellison. Ellison is a longer course, but not as challenging as Parma or Chili. And the Red 18 that we designed is slightly shorter than the Ellison course. So the idea was that as a player advances in skill, they'll be able to find a course to play or a 9 holes to play that challenges them without overwhelming them. So the front 9 red is a little more difficult than Ellison. I mean, it's a little less difficult than Ellison, more difficult than North Ponds. Then you can play Ellison, and then all the red tees are a little shorter than Ellison and provide you another step up because it's a little more challenging in Ellison overall because it requires more precision shots and is a higher skill level to score well there. And then going to the top level, the blue layout here is about 500 feet shorter, longer than Chili altogether, which makes it even more challenging than Chili from that perspective. So as we were designing this, saying, okay, what if we have a brand new player with low skill who's just starting the game? The progression of courses to play would perhaps be start North Ponds, do the 9 at North Ponds, then the front 9, the red, at Shadow Pines is more challenging than that. Then one step up would be playing at Ellison. One step up as skill increases would be the Shadow Pines back 9 red. And then one step up from that would be playing the Shadow Pines blue. So the idea was that as players increase in skill, they don't have to travel very far to find something that challenges their level but doesn't overwhelm them unless, of course, they decide they want to take the challenge and play something more difficult. So each layout that we designed here has a number of different tee positions, perhaps, and also basket positions, which you can mix things up however you want for whatever your skill level is. So the goal was to, no matter what your skill level is, to be able to fit in somewhere. So one of the holes that we actually think is going to be a signature hole is the pond hole, which is number 13. And the pond hole provides a couple challenges. The blue tee is far enough away so that the long throwers may be able to make it to the basket, but those are the really top-level players. And then the red tee allows the players who don't throw as far to still be able to play and have a good shot at being successful at this hole. We put the tee pads specifically where they are, which gives opportunities for players to say, oh, I can't make it over the pond. They can actually play left of the pond or right of the pond without losing a disc. Or if they want to go for the challenge and take the risk, perhaps try throwing over the top. The one thing that would be needed here, there's some maintenance and some trimming that we would request being done in this particular hole from the blue tee off to the left. We would like some of the lower limbs where those 2 trees are, just above the tee pad, to be trimmed to allow the players to throw along that line. Right now, the branches are a little low. So those are one of the things we would have to like, and there's various places around the course that would allow for challenging shots and still making it a fair course to play. I think I'm turning back over to David. Is that true?
The next slide here should be a projected cost breakdown. So we took into account a number of different things. So you are, for an 18-hole course, you are typically looking at technically 19 baskets, 18 for the course, 1 for a putting practice area, so that people can kind of warm up, similar to ball golf where they have a practice green off to the side. So baskets range anywhere from about $400 to $430 per basket, depending on the manufacturer, some of the options you might want on there on the basket. So you're looking at a projected cost of $7,600 to about $8,200 for baskets for the course. For this, we recommended turf tee pads in this area. We have been doing concrete for a number of years. Concrete works out very well for a lot of our courses, offers a good grip for the tee-off area. Turf seems to be the changing landscape within disc golf. It also provides some more flexibility for if after a while we find a hole the tee pad needs to be moved. It's much easier to do that with turf than it is to try to move a 4-inch thick concrete slab. They're pretty well permanent once we put them in. Turf provides a much flexibility, so as a course changes, Ellison is one of those right now where you're having mature trees that are starting to age and come down, and it changes the holes and it changes the line of the course. So having that flexibility to move a turf tee pad, the design would be, typically we would dig them out 4 inches down in the area where a tee pad's going to be, provide a landscape fabric barrier, put in gravel and a 4x4 frame, and then the turf can be laid right over top on a nice smooth surface. It provides drainage, so they're not going to get icy during the winter. Water can flow right through them, so they can be played on them all year long. Signage, Mr. Bayer here brought an example of typical signage that we put up at the course. And these are 12 by 18 signs, all said and done with T-post, hardware, and the sign itself. It runs about $100 per hole typically for that. And then we had kind of proposed a small kiosk area near the parking lot so that as people came in, there would be a course map there, some reminders that it's a carry-in, carry-out park, and that, some general rules of the game to make it very easily accessible to people and knowledgeable where they come in, which direction they want to go. So projected cost to put a course in with multiple tee pads, baskets, is about $19,500 in total. As a community, the Greater Rochester Disc Golf Club does a lot of fundraising events, whether it be for charitable organizations, and we also run tournaments and events. We have anticipated and hoped that Shadow Pines would kind of move forward, so we have been collecting and organizing funds over the last couple of years. We're probably 3/4 of the way to our goal. We did buy turf over the last couple months in anticipation and hope that we could move forward with this, so we're ready to provide that if that were to become available and we could move forward with the course. So the other thing is, if the course were in a mowed condition, the club owns 18 portable baskets that we use to run different events around the area. So we run it at golf courses, at a couple parks where we're trying to also encourage the town to move forward on projects. So that is something we'd be willing to bring out to the Shadow Pines location if it were mowed, have a tournament there, which would allow us to kind of test out the layout, make sure everything's working, and also raise funds that we could put toward the project. So let's see, signage. One of the things we have done in the past with a number of different towns, we're currently finishing up a project. We installed concrete tee pads out at Williamson over the last year at the town course there. So club members dug, graded, and poured all the concrete last summer during that project. And signage, we're just finishing up the signage out there. It's getting ready to be printed here shortly. But one of the things we typically do on the bottom of the sign or the side is sell small advertising space that's obviously town appropriate things as a way to help with the cost of signage. And then as it says, so baskets for the course. Right now that is a little outside of the funds that we have for an organization, as we only charge $25 a year, and our 150 members, that's a little bit outside of what we would be able to do. So we need to definitely find some other way of getting the 18 baskets for the course. So.
Yeah. So what, I guess what we're looking for here this evening is kind of a consensus amongst us all that this is worthwhile to move forward. And it's kind of a commitment on both parts, from the Rochester Disc Golf Club as well as the town of Penfield, to make this actually happen. There's a number of things that we'll need to go over and cover. One is a maintenance package that should come into play here at the at Shadow Pines property in general and overall, but especially for the golf course itself. As Tim had mentioned, and it's been mentioned a few times, there is mowing that needs to be done to create the course itself. There are some trees that should be removed and or limbed up to make some of these layouts a little bit better. There's actually some brush hogging that has to occur as well, because there are some saplings now that have developed in some of these areas. Then it truly is then who and how do we come together to actually get it installed. And I think that we need to work with the town on whom can actually put in the baskets, who would you allow to put in those tee pads? And
Sure.
I think these are further conversations that we're going to have
Right.
with other individuals and staff here to kind of formulate that and come to that finalization. But what I would like to propose to the group is that we walk out with Mr. Masterton out on the course, and perhaps other town staff, to lay this thing out and maybe just put a few flags in where these are, to look at what those maintenance requirements are, what we're looking at and actually requesting, to see whether or not that is something that we can work through and get accomplished. Those are some of the first things that have to occur before we can even bring in those baskets to
Sure.
do a temporary setup, to see how it works. Could you actually flip to the layout itself, Jason, please? So I do have one other image as well to show how this course kind of lays out on the original master plan. We kept within those confines of the areas that we had originally determined as part of the disc golf course. Here we go. Yeah. Original, and then this is one, yes, this is one that shows where the disc golf course is here. So we've kept it in basically the same region of the Shadow Pines property. We have shifted a few of the holes here or there because there was need for taking in consideration of some of the pedestrian trails that come through the park, as well as some of the crossing paths. And so we've gone outside of that first bubble diagram ever so slightly, but is in very, very close proximity to where we had acknowledged that it may go. It's something that I would, again, like to invite everybody out to be able to walk this, to understand this a little bit better and how it lays out with the park. And Mr. Supervisor, as you're aware, I mean, we've had conversations with yourself as well as town staff in regards to this, and I think we feel pretty comfortable that this layout's going to do well for us. But again, the next steps is to go out and walk it and actually see what we're contending with.
So certainly our team, led by Mr. Tait and Mr. Masterton, have done a lot of work there, although one might argue that the tall grasses that we haven't done a lot of work. But over the last handful of years, we've done a lot of tree work. We've tried to make it safe and take down those trees that were dead, dying, or diseased, so that folks that were there. So we have done quite a bit, but I also recognize it's the tip of the iceberg, as they say, because there is more trees that have to be addressed, the brush hogging, and then, once you get down into something, what I would call more of a fine type of mowing, to better define the holes, the fairways, if you will, and things like that needs to be done. So before we go on, let's get a reaction from some of the board members with questions, comments, or otherwise.
The first thing, you say year-round, and I'm thinking about not only, what's going to be the cost and time commitment from our employees for maintaining this golf. But what about in winter? What's the expectations there? Is there, like, they get their snow plows out there? What do you do for that in winter?
I can address that. So Greater Rochester Disc Golf plays year-round. Saturday mornings is generally the morning league, Saturday mornings, and snow, rain, whatever, we play. And so one of the things that we'll do when the snow gets deep is literally attach ribbons using duct tape and package ribbons, 1/4 inch, and tape them to the top. And then when the disc goes under the snow, the ribbon will hang behind and you can find it. So we play year-round. I prefer to play in the winter, actually, because I don't like
Really?
hot weather.
So the size, how do you walk? I mean, do you need a sidewalk plow?
Nope, you just put on
trundle
your
through?
boots and walk through the
Yeah.
snow.
Other than like maybe shoveling or clearing off T-pads, it would just be packing down the snow with traffic.
Yeah?
Yeah, there's no maintenance from the town in wintertime. It's just
Okay.
us walking around it, and oftentimes players will bring a shovel to clear the T-pads so that we have the T-pad clear. Other times, we just play off to the side of a T-pad if the T-pad gets
Yeah,
icy, so.
that's cool. So how many times do you think you play a year? Because I'm thinking about people, you have signs or something saying disc golf is in progress or something like that. And
So
how
it-
often would it interfere with people just wandering around doing their normal, walking their dogs and so on in the park?
So folks play varying amounts. I happen to be on the high end of playing. I played 200 rounds last year. I play a lot.
Yeah.
Some people walk their dogs, I walk my discs. So I go out in the morning and I'll play because that's my exercise. But I'm on the high end. I think once a week is not uncommon.
Yeah.
And a couple times a month for a lot of people.
Okay, but that's not competitive play. That's just you going out there.
Right, I play tournaments as well. I actually travel around the nation. I was in Kansas. I'm going to Nashville,
Yeah.
Tennessee in the end of the summer. So I travel a lot. I'm more avid than a lot of people.
But how often would you think your organization would need our Shadow Pines for your
So-
tournaments and so on?
There are several tournaments. I'll defer to David with that one, but a couple times a year perhaps.
It's up, okay.
Yeah, tournament-wise, we host 14-plus PDGA tournaments, but that's spread out around the entire Monroe County area. So typically a course for tournament-wise is only used for once or twice a year. So for an organization, and that would be typically just one day, maybe two over a weekend. So it's not, and usually that it's a book time, we'll put up signs, but the design also allows, we've taken into consideration a lot of the walking paths where you could still continue to utilize the area around the course as a walking area without interfering with the disc golf. So we try to take that into
So
consideration.
that's something I didn't understand. So what I'm getting from you now is like, I might be walking by myself, or I might be walking with my dog, or I might be walking with a disc.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, people can utilize, I could be playing disc golf right near you, and you could be on the walking paths within the course, and we wouldn't really interfere much with each other. So that's typical of Parma, Chili, they all have walking paths that run throughout the course, even Basil Morel.
We,
So-
we strategically design it so that trees especially are used to guard those paths. So, or if there is any, there's a couple places where you actually are throwing over a path, but there's incredible visibility either way on that path. So, like I said, like one of our guiding principles was reducing and limiting any risk to disc golfers, because you have holes playing next to each other. You don't want to be throwing a disc on one hole and hit somebody on another hole, right?
Right.
So we designed it to limit any risk there and any risk to pedestrians. I mean, I think there's definitely some things we could do at the park to increase safety and just awareness, right? If
Yes.
people know that this is going to start happening at the park, signage up front at the kiosk that Dave mentioned would be great. I think there's opportunity to either put signage or just paint certain paved paths. So as people are kind of walking, they head down, whatever, they see something that they're entering a disc golf area, just be aware, right? Even if they are, all the holes are designed to be relatively safe, again, for other park users, right?
Right.
We know that there's going to be ball fields up on the north part. We want to avoid any risk of errant discs
Right.
heading that way.
I was thinking more about the bikes. How, we're talking about having bike paths too. How, I'm looking at you. What would be the
But the bike
distance?
paths are going to be more on the former back nine, not on the front
It would be
nine.
nowhere near this.
That is correct. This is all former front nine. The bike that's being proposed is on the back nine on the other side of
Okay.
Whalen.
Okay, it's good to be
And-
clear about that.
Right?
Yes.
For anybody watching tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I walk my dog quite often at Basil Morella, Palmer Park. I've walked at Ellison and never had an issue interacting with disc golfers. They're playing, we're walking,
Okay.
dogs going. Basil Morella, there is a bike path that goes through the middle of what would be the course or the park. Bikers continue on through, and I've never seen or, experienced any issue with that. So everybody
Good
kind
to know.
of respects each other, and they're playing their pieces over here, and you're walking through, and it works out quite well.
And
Dave, how many participants would normally occur within a tournament setting?
I can tell you that. I just ran a tournament this last Sunday, what was called a flex start, which means people signed up for tee times. We had 124 people come through on Sunday for Father's Day. So,
But those flex starts that's timed out throughout the day, so in that particular case, there's not a large demand at once.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, because I'm thinking about all the other users and stakeholders in the park, or the property, particularly as it relates to what might happen with the Clark House in the future. A lot of that parking will be devoted to the Clark House as well.
I think that's one of the things that, of course, will have to be communicated with the town. If there is a tournament that would like to host at this particular golf course, we're going to have to do that coordination with the town. Just like any of the other uses there, we know that the cross-country team utilizes this park as well, or this
Yes.
land. I know that Jason has had some contact with the coach here at Penfield, and he'd actually mentioned that he would like to potentially use the south side of the property, where it's a little bit hillier, to run some of his meets versus the north side. Albeit, they are still using the north side for training and things of that nature. And I really think it comes down to, if there is a meet that happens to be in this area, well, we would have to sign to say the golf course is closed, and, a week prior to an event, a meet, something of that nature, have it scheduled, have it signed, posted, it's closed because of. The same thing, when arranging any type of tournament play, do the same thing in Troy and communicate with the town to be able to advertise that a tournament will be happening September 14th and 15th. Type of situation. So that's definitely a coordination effort. The club has done a very, very good job with coordinating with other municipalities on the use of lands for the disc golf courses, because they are multifunctional, multi-use areas.
And Jim, since you brought up the Clark House specifically, we think that the disc golf course potentially could be a huge draw to revenue for the Clark House, whether it's a restaurant or, brewery, something like that, whatever is going in there. Disc golfers are going to, hopefully pack this place or frequent this place, especially on the weekends, and we get hungry.
I'm thinking
right?
about the fact that the people we're talking to are looking to utilize the pond area and some other areas for wedding venues, that type of thing. So there may be some conflicts here and there.
the pond area, I believe you're talking about, where we had mapped out only the smaller pond. We stayed
Exactly.
away from the larger
Not,
pond.
not the pond on what was the former ninth.
Yeah, we
ninth
knew
tee,
that was
or
an area
ninth green.
of possible need, so we tried to stay actually as far away from that area as possible, so that those types of events could happen in that area.
This might be one of those games, Costello, that you'll be able to play and not hit somebody.
It's no fun unless you can hit
Yeah, but
somebody.
he's going to lose his disc in that pond.
Not
All
going
right,
in for it
so
either.
board, other questions, comments?
So I have a question about how long, because I've actually gone down and, and been walking in Ellison Park when I see them playing disc, the golf, and I know they don't see, and you really don't come in contact with them when you're on that walk on the lower part, maybe one of the holes. Same with over at North Ponds, I was just over there in the same way. But I got to ask you a question, because I'm really not sure. How long is it take for them to do 18 holes, like, if you're out there?
I get this one. So it depends on how fast you play.
Okay.
But in general, 2 hours is for 4 players, probably a little less than that for 18 holes. So at Ellison Park, when I'm playing by myself, it's about between 50 minutes and an hour and 5. It plays way faster than ball golf. So perhaps this course, because it's long, perhaps an hour for 18 holes, maybe a little more. And then if you get a series of foursomes, a number of people like a tournament, it'll take a couple hours to play for a tournament because there's weights on the series holes, certain holes.
I would say that's very dependent on skill level too. Tim is a very good player. I am maybe on the lower end of the spectrum, and same ballpark. I would start as a 2-hour starting point, give or take, for
Gotcha.
a lot of
Okay.
players, a lot of rounds.
So, I mean, so conceivably, really, you're never going to back up with a lot of people waiting to play. I mean, you really are, you're moving along. I mean, if I'm out there people are out there walking their dogs and everything, you're not going to be coming across, you know, a bunch of people backed up to play, because you're going to move. Do you guys skip holes too? I mean, do you guys do that like we used to in golf, you know, where if it's backed up, okay.
So, so that does happen. Yeah, sometimes you'll skip over a hole.
Yeah.
There's a couple
Okay.
holes at Ellison, just because the layout of the course, where there's some backups on hole number 12 and some backups on hole number 6 sometimes when there's a lot of players. But that's fairly rare until you get a large number of people showing up. So there's usually not too many backups.
Well, I got to tell you, we've been hearing from a lot of residents about how excited they are about the disc golf, and I know it is, how popular it is. As a matter of fact, my nephew was just up here a couple weeks ago, and I took him over, he did the Ellison one, and then he heard that somebody said how great that one was in Spencerport, and he went out there, he said that was a really nice course. He's from Boston, so he plays on some elite team or something. But I showed him this, and he was like, wow, sign me up. You know, so he was like, so I think that I know there's a need, and I like the fact that it's year-round too. There's not a lot of sports that are, you know, you can get out there and encourage people to be out there, and you guys are, you know, using it, and it's a low maintenance, I think, thing to do, and to have people out there, and I know that there's an interest. So thank you for sharing some of this with us.
Okay, board, other questions, comments?
Good.
Yeah, drawback of going last, I think you guys answered most of the questions I had jotted down, but thank you. And Andy, just a question. Looking at these maps that are in the presentation, is there a legend for the one with all the multiple colors and circles? Maybe I missed it. But, yeah, I'm looking at the big, I think this was a separate attachment perhaps.
That was a separate attachment. That basically was taking this layout and just overlaying it onto the original master plan that was prepared.
Okay.
No, I apologize, I did not put a legend on, but a quick explanation on any of the holes. You'll see a blue and a red circle. That represents a tee pad. You see the basket actually represents the location of the basket for that hole. And on this particular map, there's also some designators on there of where we need some tree trimming to be done and completed.
That's the scissors. Is that the scissor picture I see on the icon?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know
Yeah,
if
so
you get your hair
I'll
cut
jump
while
in.
you're
I
there,
was
or-
largely involved in putting the map together. I've certainly had help, but this is all done in Google Maps, and I can share with you the Google Maps so you can actually zoom in on parts.
Oh, okay.
I can share the slide deck with you too. It has the links right in it, you know, a digital copy of the slide deck. But
Okay.
yeah, scissors are trimming. The axes are some trees that, you know, we kind of designate as dead. We're not trying to remove any nice trees, but those are things that preferably we get cleaned out. You know, the holes are probably playable without them, but to make it a good hole, right? Removing some like dead pine trees.
Sure.
That would be that. All the aesthetic features of the park were noted on here too. So we're trying to make an experience for players. We want them to pause while they're out there and notice the views and these amazing trees that are out there. So yeah, the pine tree or the tree images, right? That's what that's noting. There's notes for water. There's a couple benches that we put in there, and, you know, if there's somebody that wants to install some benches, donate some benches, there's some really nice places for those backups that you were talking about, or hot days. Found some shady spots to take a rest, take a breather, just kind of enjoy being out there. Multi-purpose. It doesn't have to be disc golfers using those benches, but, and speaking of, I know that you guys have had conversations with other parties that would want to plant trees. That's something that we would certainly get involved with to, can improve the designs of our courses, increase safety near certain trails. So, we'd love to coordinate with those people. So yeah, absolutely, I can share with you the actual detailed map. And I mean, the Parks Department's definitely going to want to see it so that they can zoom in and really dig into the details of what we've laid out. Purple regions where we would have long grass, kind of the yellower regions where we'd want to mow kind of on a regular basis. So there's much more detail available. So I
Yeah,
can
no,
share
that'd
that
be
with
great
you.
if you could share that.
So Jason, it looks like there's a lot going on out there based on what you're showing on the map, but in reality, I mean, these are just points of interest to show what you need to have done. The physiology of the area will pretty much stay the same with minor improvements here and there, but it just looks like it's really busy, but it's really not in reality.
Most of that, a lot of that stuff is just kind of pointing out points, like kind of landmarks. We're not trying to change the whole park in any way. Like, we're putting in tee pads, we're putting in baskets, and, cleaning up some trees a little bit, right? But yeah, we're absolutely trying to utilize the existing trees and enhance the park and kind of highlight some of the best of the park.
Okay. Mr. Valentine.
Can you clarify a little bit, just conveying a question from our Director of Public Works about the T-pads? You said they're turf. Are those secured down, heavy wind? Do those move? Do those walk away at night when somebody wants it for their back deck? What's kind of a little bit of...
No, that's, so there'll be a 4x4 wooden frame put down in the ground, secured down to the ground, and then gravel fills in the entire 4x4 frame, and then the turf is screwed down to the 4x4 frame, and
So
that's
it's
all
physically
done.
attached, and it's flush with the ground.
Flush
so
with the ground, so the mower can
as you mow,
run
you
right
can just go
over it.
right around it, and you
Yes.
have to trim an edge. And
Correct.
okay, thank you.
Allison has some very similar style T-pads, albeit they use a rubberized mat instead of a turf material, but the same type of construction technique.
I'm surprised that you said that Williamson was going to be concrete when you also said at the same time that it was going to, this is a new way to doing it, using turf. Why is Williamson going concrete?
Williamson went concrete because that was the agreement we had put in place 3 years before with the town when we had originally started the construction of the course. So we wanted to fulfill what we had talked about with them at the time. But turf has really become, during that 3 years, has become a lot more of a viable option.
Is it more of an environmental thing too?
Yeah, it does allow water to drain through it, and it's definitely easier to work on in the future, or if something has to be moved or mowed over. Concrete
Right.
is a hard edge, so.
There's
No,
a
I
little-
think it's good.
There's a little backstory with Williamson, too. The present layout was redesigned at Williamson. So the course was played, found better holes to play or different ways to play them. So the course that plays at Williamson now is not like some of the holes are the same, but a lot have changed when it was put in a few years ago. So with the turf we're talking about, if it turns out we want to move some stuff, cement you can't move.
A lot easier.
So there's an advantage there, and because this is a new installation, that gives us a real opportunity to test it and say, oh, let's move it forward, move it back, right, left. That gives us the opportunity. And also, the turf is preferred by a lot of disc golfers as well. So, yeah, there's some advantages, a number of advantages for turf.
Yeah, to be clear, as we read before, we want to do some testing of the layout, so to avoid any of those relocating and redesigning issues. But yeah, certainly it's going to be more possible.
Can appreciate that.
So I assume you designed them with the intent to try not to be having the walking paths cutting through, right? So you're throwing, where people are going to be crossing. I assume that was taken into consideration, right?
Yeah, that was taken into consideration. We took a look at where a majority of the trails are being utilized. We do have a few requests to potentially relocate some of the mown trail areas, just to get them a little bit further away from some of the disc golf holes. But again, it's a mown trail, it's not an asphalt trail, so I believe it would be relatively easy just to
Redirect it
mow
somewhere, yeah.
the pedestrian trail over to
Makes
one
sense.
side versus the other side. But yeah, we did take a look at all of that as we went through. We actually took discs out with us as well when we walked one of the last times to pre-test, how do these things work, what are we really dealing with? And I had some really bad shots, and I didn't hit anybody.
So we've installed new cameras there, and so we have all that on tape that will be available to show some weekend. So if you'd like to come in and provide the sound effects for that, Andrew, you'd be more than welcome to do that.
Andrew did make it over the pond.
He did.
He did make it over the pond.
So how do you,
Tim didn't.
how do you get your discs then out of that pond?
So they go to the bottom to a watery death.
And you never get them again? Not like a golf
Sometimes
ball?
it's possible to get some rakes. Some engineering folks have taken like a cage, attach a string to it, throw it in, and you like to drag across the bottom. I've seen that done. But oftentimes they're just down there until someone that actually breaks them out. So there's some folks that will do that.
But most of the time, if the disc does go in the water, you say it wasn't the right disc anyway, you didn't like that disc, you're really upset with that disc, and you continue on.
In the true nature of golf. All right, board,
Can I ask you
yes.
one more question on the mowing? So I know we're mowing right now we're mowing through Shadow Pines, and it's a nice mow, you can walk through it and everything. Is the mowing that's going to be needed for this the same? I mean, it's not going to have to be like those different levels you have to do like in golf that you play on a golf
First
course.
cut, second cut.
Yeah, anything like that.
No, it does not need to be that fine of a mow.
Okay.
And in fact, that's something that we need to play around with as well, is what is that right setting? What is that correct height? We may be looking at 3 or 4 inches and it'd be mown
So we're
maybe
not
in
gonna
the
have to be-
springtime. Maybe it's once every 10 days, 14 days type of situation. I mean, Ellison only mows theirs once every other week.
Okay.
At best, I believe. And they allow portions of it to grow up a little bit higher. I apologize, just pause. I mean, this goes back to one of my other comments that I made a little bit earlier about trying to develop an overall maintenance plan for the entire site itself. And part of the mowing for the disc golf can be a portion of that overall maintenance plan as well. Try to incorporate all of it together so that we can kind of coordinate how it's being done through your departments.
Thank you.
Okay. Board, other questions while we have all these experts with us tonight?
No, thank you very much. It's
Okay.
very interesting.
So before we break, I want to talk a little bit more broadly about Shadow Pines, and if you could give the board just a quick snapshot of other things you're working on as it relates to pickleball. That's another aspect further to the north of this, and some biking trails on the former back nine. And if you wouldn't mind just giving the board a quick snapshot. We're running a little bit long because we do have a pretty busy agenda yet ahead. And a lot of these folks turn into pumpkins after about 9 o'clock, so I want to make sure that I respect that. But if you could, Andrew, give us a little snapshot.
Yeah, so what we have done, and I've met with town staff and the supervisor on this, we are putting together that next level conceptual plan for the northern area, which includes that field play area, as well as laying out the pickleball courts and some of the other elements that were on the overall master plan. I expect to be able to call Mr. Costello this next week to see if we can set up a time to do an initial review of that here internally. Be able to gather a little bit more input, to be able to come back to the board with an update within a period of perhaps 2 to 3 weeks. We do have our survey scheduled to be completed for the northern portion, as well as the intersection on the trail connections that we're working on right now. And I have reached out to a few biking organizations. And I know, Mr. Drawe, you did have another individual that you had mentioned would like to walk the site. Love to reach out to them as well and try to get that underway. Process there being get as many people as we can together to walk the area and talk through what does the mountain biking community really want before we can even put a pen to paper type of situation. But all of that is ongoing right now as we speak, so I will be able to update the board and staff within a week or so and try to schedule some of those interim meetings.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Before we break, let's talk a little bit about next steps. So one of our board members is not with us this evening. He's traveling for business, and he'll have the opportunity to watch this little video clip of the meeting tonight. And then what I'd like to do is, have conversations with our team back here, Mr. Tait, Mr. Masterton. We invited them in. Mr. Tait generally is here. Mr. Masterton got invited in because of his interest and involvement and responsibility, and wanted to make sure that he heard this discussion. So I think that was very helpful, very beneficial. Tim, thank you for doing that. Then here over the next couple of weeks, like to get together and start to continue advancing this and starting to work towards making this a reality in some way, shape, or form, recognizing we got a number of steps to take, but at least keep the process moving.
That'd be great. That'd be
Okay.
fantastic.
Great. So Dave, Tim, Jason, thank you. There's a lot more stimulating conversation to be had here this evening, so if you have nothing to do and you want to sit around and listen to that, you're more than welcome to. I also recognize that you're busy gentlemen and probably have a few other things to do, and we'd recognize that if you exit, in this case, stage right, we respect that as well. All right. Thank you. Andrew, thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Okay. We will continue on with our agenda. I think our next item, we may have someone, Mr. Vardar, that may be zooming in with us. And I see the screen coming together. And at this point, I'll recognize Mr. Costello to tee this item up, no pun intended, but consistent with the golf theme this evening.
Thank you, Mr. LaFountain. With us this evening, we have Mesut Vardar. Mesut owns property at 1423 Empire Boulevard, which is adjacent to what used to be Silveri Brothers property on Empire Boulevard. I don't quite know who's operating at this point in time now. I think it's actually vacant.
What was that?
Pardon?
What was that?
It was a sidewalk installation company, basically. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the Birds Unlimited property at this point in time.
Okay, that's a better.
Yeah, I'm
indication.
sorry.
I know
Yes,
where that is.
I should have known that.
Thank you.
In any event, back in 1996, when the town created the LaSalle's Landing zoning district, for some reason, I think they followed the Gore line, actually, if I'm not mistaken, and brought the zoning district through the middle of the property. The property at one time was actually approved to build a mosque. There were some geotechnical issues with the weight of the mosque, and they just couldn't build it, so it went vacant. In the interim, there have been 2 zoning districts on the property since 1996. The front portion in green is what you see as the LaSalle's Landing District. The grayish area in the back is R-1-20, which is consistent with the properties to the east, that being Morning Woods Drive and Mance Lane. There is a change in grade on the property. Mesut had actually appeared before the Comprehensive Plan Update Committee probably in late 2018, early 2019, and requested a rezoning recommendation to allow for the development of townhouses on the site. The committee recognized that townhouses are a permitted use within the LaSalle's Landing District. but also had the offer to put in a rezoning recommendation to the town board of either LaSalle's Landing or the Townhouse Dwelling District. We are in the process, staff is in the process right now of preparing a memo to you for this and other properties that have been recommended for rezoning, which you'll receive shortly. This one was one of those properties where they felt that the townhouses may be a very nice transition between the properties to the east, which are single-family residential, and to the LaSalle's Landing District, which is primarily commercial along the south side of Empire Boulevard, and in some cases industrial to the south of this site. The Melly Brothers Empire Storage Facility is now located to the south of the property as well. So the committee has recommended to you that he should apply to you in consideration for a rezoning if you see it warranted. There's also, he did provide with us a drawing, if you can get there, Mark. It says townhouse concept plan.
Jim, how many acres is this?
It's 9.94 acres. Much of it's not developable. When we go back in a minute, Mark will show you a topographic map of the property. But
There's a couple plateaus.
Yes, that's right. There are a couple of plateaus on the site. The area, well, it's kind of hard to view at this point in time, but yeah, the area where they're showing the development was actually where the mosque and a community center was going to be constructed on the site. This is a little bit lower than the properties on Morning Woods and also Mance Lane. So this is a concept plan only. He's done this just to give you an idea of what he's thinking about. Certainly a lot more engineering would have to go in play, and I know this board has been very, very concerned about people spending money needlessly until such time as there was a reason to do so. So this is his offering based on the site. So there is not a lot of area for development, and we would have to determine how many townhouses actually could be developed on the site. I think he's looking to come in off of Empire Boulevard. There would have to be some cuts and fills put in place on a portion of the property to do so.
I remember that Turkish mosque. It was way back, like, I don't know if I was on the Waterfront Revitalization Committee. I mean, this is like early 80s, right? And it
was later than that, but
Yeah.
it was in the 90s, but it was...
But it was very difficult because of coming off Empire and went down.
Right.
You had the neighbors off Creek Street that would be impacted. So,
Yes, they were concerned, and this is why I think he's looking to do something like this, which would minimize impacts in terms of visual to the site,
Right.
trying to preserve trees where possible. You can see the areas outlined in red. Those areas are probably not to be disturbed in any way because of the change in grade, but I think a
And
lot
what
would
does
have to be done.
that plan represent by way of number of units?
I think, well, we should ask him, actually.
I was
think
going to say,
it's 31,
is
if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. Vardar still with us?
Yes,
How are you, sir? Welcome.
doing well, thank you. Thanks for having
Okay,
me.
so if you could give us an opportunity here, I see on this this engineering note that 30 to 35 units is what you were thinking about or looking at?
Again, it's really early at this point. We don't know exactly. It obviously needs to make sense, but I personally have a vested interest, not just because we own the land, obviously, but I do want to have myself and my family live there ultimately as well. So this isn't, just for the numbers, but it obviously does need to make sense because the topography is so challenging to do it to begin with.
Okay.
I just don't know how it will end up with respect to the numbers of units. We will work through that as it comes, but as of right now, the guesstimation would be somewhere in the neighborhood of, just like it says, between 30 to 35. I would presume. Again, I don't know for sure.
Okay.
But it is just like it was said, it is a very, very low impact compared to what was proposed. And I believe at that time, early 90s, it was even approved, if I'm not mistaken, with respect to the community center and the house of worship, the mosque at that point. And the numbers would have been much, much higher with respect to traffic and usage, whereas this one is extremely minimal comparatively.
Okay. Board, some initial thoughts or comments, or additional thoughts or comments?
Just a question, maybe for Mark. You said that this is fairly similar in elevation to Morning Woods and Mance Lane, or is?
There's obviously some different elevations. It's a little hard to see with all the topo, but
Yeah.
you can see this is Empire Boulevard here. You can see my cursor highlighting. Obviously, this is closer proximity to them down below. You kind of have a lower pad, and then I think they show an old, I don't know if it was a road or an access, and then kind of an upper area. So this upper area is in more proximity with what you've got up at the end of Morning Woods. There's kind of an upper pad. You can see the steep areas. That's what kind of the other sketch, I'm assuming, showed those steep areas to avoid. Kind of this area in the middle, and then it drops off to the side. So this area would be below Morning Woods at the end of it, but in a closer elevation up above. And then this would drop below, and then this would be much closer to the Empire Boulevard commercial properties of the grade around those other units. Zoom in and see if it has an elevation.
How much discussion has the PRC had on this item, Mark or Jim?
We haven't discussed it in any great detail. Mark, Doug, and I have discussed it a lot because we're also involved with the Comprehensive Plan Update Committee, so.
Sure.
But technically speaking, we haven't had a chance to do it just because we don't really know yet what the plan will be.
Got it. If we were to, and again, and I think the applicant, Mr. Vardar, indicated that, still looking into it, looking at it, and then the sketch that was previously up may not be, anywhere near to be considered final in any way, shape, or form, but it was an initial layout of, again, roughly 30 to 35 units. And you're right, Mr. Costello. I've always been sensitive about having applicants spend a lot of engineering money early on, so that as we take a look at these things, as soon as the meter starts running, it can get very expensive. But if we were to take this layout that is drafted up and kind of in some way superimpose it on that piece of property with the topo on it, and kind of get a sense. I think it would be good, to get some initial discussion and feedback back from PRC to take a look at that is at least one recommendation that I would make to the board for us for consideration. Obviously, the sensitivity is if we were to move forward with something in this area, to do it in a way that is safe for any and all that live there, and is also observing our EPOD districts and things like that. So, but other thoughts, comments, Board?
Mr. Supervisor, if I may, I think, Mark, maybe you can just show me, that curb cut that they're talking about it would be on Empire Boulevard.
Yep.
Where is the next nearest curb cut right now to that?
It's over here, and I can rotate the view
Okay.
just so this is kind of more in keeping as I flip between screens. So Empire Boulevard at
Yep.
the top, so just to kind of orient from their screen.
Yep.
Right here is the next commercial property, and you go down and I'll flip back to the other
Yeah, so to give,
video screen.
I
So
was
we'll
just going to say, to
zoom
give
out.
the board, and I
So
believe
this is
that,
that property next door, so
which
they're
is
showing.
Birds
they're
Unlimited.
Showing a curb cut here, so if that's Birds Unlimited next door, I
Right.
can turn that topo off just so it's a little easier. So you've got the curb cut next door, they were showing a curb cut approximately here. That sketch came in, they had a
About how
lower
far
piece,
is that?
then came up.
Mark, how
Between
far?
the curb cuts?
Before, I'm just trying to visualize, or maybe you can't tell me.
So 200-ish feet.
Okay,
I mean, you've got existing ones that are about 100 feet apart, and then you go down a little bit, this is a shared curb cut there. So there are some
right.
curb cuts along that outer edge that are kind of, in similar fashion. I'm just, ballparking that piece, but.
And
from
my
off of
question,
his sketch.
Mark, on that, is there any way that they could ever you could ever cut into another curb cut? No, not where that is, right?
I think it's early on to, it's early on to say whether that made sense if they did a common drive between them and Birds Unlimited. Maybe you could improve a site distance or something. At this point, just with the sketch, we'd have to go out and look at the topo and elevation. I think if the board was comfortable and recommended rezoning, depends on what it was zoned, whether that came back to this board, came back to the planning board. Obviously, we'd get into, a deeper part of it, and as, you're referring to, we always look to limit curb cuts. Obviously, it's a state highway, the state would be, much involved with it, so they would be looking to, limit curb cuts as well, so anytime that they could consolidate, make it in the best site distance location, those are all things we'd look at through the site plan review process is, where site distance is, the proximity of the middle turn lane, those are things that we may look to, have that middle turn lane extended further up the hill as similar we're doing. And this board's been working with, Dr. Howard and his group to extend that on the lower end. I think if we can extend that up, obviously that would make a safer situation, turning in, turning out, having that respite in the middle. So those are all things that, as part of, that site plan application would take a look at.
They would have to go through the same criteria as Pets at Peace,
Yeah.
which is right down 4 or 5 properties.
Because they're
Pets and
gonna be there,
Pieces
right?
is right in here.
They actually have, I think, better sight distance than the other ones because they're on the curve and they can see both ways versus not being able to see up around the curve further on down, so.
Okay, thank you.
But Mark brings a good point up. Again, is anybody coming in on Empire Boulevard now, we are looking to extend those middle turn lanes as a condition of any approval at this point in time.
Good.
Other comments, questions, either for the applicant or for staff, board?
I just have one more question for Mr. Vardar. Any thoughts, I know it's preliminary, but what's your vision for the existing woods, the wooded areas, as far as, not visualizing the density to what's there, but did you have any intentions or, plans for dealing with the woods itself? Preservation, that sort of thing.
Right. It would be, it would make more sense to preserve as much as possible. As a matter of fact, we turned down any thought of potential harvesting before or even after this proposed development. So preserving as much as possible would be the ideal situation. And the topography being what it is going to kind of fit into that strategy as it is. So to maintain more is really definitely the idea.
Okay.
Again, I don't know exactly the details. I don't necessarily have the expertise nor the experience
Sure.
to be able to give you an exact answer. But as far as an overall thought, yes, absolutely, preserving more is my thought as well.
Great, and it might help with the neighbors to the east, the more buffer and less disturbed mature trees, might just be a better scenario.
Yeah, no, I understand.
All right, board, other questions or comments at this point, either, again, from staff or for the applicant? Okay, board, again, I would recommend that at this point that we maybe ask staff to take at least that initial plan that was put together, maybe do an overlay, take a look at how that fits in there with the slopes and what have you, and come back with not a full report as if this were a formal hearing, but at least to give the board a sense of how that is fitting on the site, and would ask that the applicant work with the PRC on that. And then the discussion will remain open as to the board's thoughts or feedback as it relates to the rezoning. And I would ask that if we could do that and then back to the board at our next work session with some initial thoughts, comments on that, I think that would be good.
Yeah, recognizing it's not survey work to be done. I mean, they'll have to do that if they move forward, but we will try to superimpose what he's proposing.
Yep, absolutely.
And
it's not going to be a perfect a
Right.
perfect fit, but I think it would be at least good for this board to see that, have the opportunity and the benefit of having all of PRC providing some comments from all the disciplines within the town.
Very good.
Do that.
Yep.
So if we could do that, that would be great. We would show this as a held matter, and then from there, pick up the discussion at the next work session.
Very good.
Mr. Vardar, I'll ask any questions, comments, or other additional input that you believe that you should add to the discussion this evening.
Not that I can think of, but it definitely would be a great use for the property. I do believe in terms of the transition as well. If anything, honestly, I think it's going to beautify the area even more. The trees that are there, very mature portions where it's just going to look, and I tried to walk through it myself a little bit, and there's a lot of debris in terms of just old dead trees, and just overall it's not pleasing. Yes, and from a distance it looks great, but I think there's definitely room for improvement, and the overall flow it just seems to make so much more sense, and as it progresses, I think a lot of our questions, including mine, are going to get answered properly, hopefully.
Okay, great. And I'm sure, like many properties across the town, you have some number of ash trees that have gotten beat up by the ash borer. That those trees are gonna come down one way or another during that process.
It would be cleaned up, certainly.
Yep. Okay. All right. Board, we'll show this as a held item. Thank you for joining us this evening. Sorry that our first part of the meeting ran a bit longer than anticipated, but thank you for hanging in with us. And then I just asked, please stay connected with Mr. Costello and Mr. Valentine.
Will do.
All right,
Thanks for
great. Thank you for your time. Be well, be safe.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, Board, we'll move on to action items. Our first action item is 64 Timber Glen Trail tree reimbursement, and I'll recognize Councilperson Drawe.
Mr. Supervisor, I think that after looking at the area where the trees have, where we removed some of the trees, and I walked it with Mr. Tait a while back, I see that a lot of them, a lot of it is, when I went down today on Route 250, it's really filled in a lot. You can't really see back into some of those Timber Glen area. Then when you go back in, but we were talking back on the initial pond, right? The initial, or not that area right in Timber Glen. I see this, I don't know what, I know that some of the neighbors have been asking that they like, that some of those the trees that were removed, they like something that would be able to give them some more buffer across that. I don't know that we've talked about what kind of trees, if we were to do something like that. I know we don't normally replace a tree after we take it down. And I guess I would ask some of the thoughts of the rest of the board and Mr. Tait, what your opinion is of what you think, how it looks now in there.
And I can certainly say, I know, with the work that we did, it will take a little bit of time for that growth to pop up. However, all of those trees, did grow naturally. They weren't planted in the first place. Certainly, at least not by the town. The new growth and vegetation will, grow up over time. I'm a little hesitant because of, I know that a portion of that property does flood, and I believe is even considered wetlands. I'd be concerned about planting trees and the, especially younger trees that are a little more susceptible to, varying soil conditions as to how well they may survive. I know the trees that are in there, significant portion, nearly all of them are ash trees, and have grown up, but again are dying. I understand the the thoughts and the concerns of the resident. I just don't have a great answer as to what, would be the best tree if trees were to be replanted.
Is there a thought for other things, like just having some sort of bushes and buffering that way? I mean, or is it the same issue because it's near wetlands that it's difficult for anything to grow?
I mean, growth will, varying shrubs and bushes and a lot of the scrub growth, will grow naturally over time. It's not going to be overnight. It's, not going to be, within a week or two. But, we've noticed this in a lot of other areas where we've done, ditch cleaning projects, or other tree removals, on town property, typically within, a year or two after we've done the work, quite a bit of new growth does come up. I mean, that's even part of the intent and idea behind, harvesting and logging of wooded property. It will help a, new forest actually grow by removing some of the bigger trees.
I'm just looking for clarification, because I'm a little confused. Mark, you have that zoomed in kind of towards the end there along 250, right? And
Wait.
maybe Councilwoman Drawe can help me here.
This is 64 Timber Glen Trail. This is the end of,
Right.
this is
So
our
wasn't-
our property at 250. I'm assuming this is the.
Wasn't a
conversation.
majority of the issues back up at the entrance, more towards Whalen Road? And if you can maybe zoom back up, kind of where you come in Timber Glen, you got your first house on your left, and then you got a wooded area
That's,
that you guys did some work in. And I'm just trying to remember, I thought that was more the concern that was,
there was an issue in there, when walking in, that some of the neighbors felt that in that area, a couple trees were taken down, I believe they were dead, there were some deceased trees.
Right.
They wanted to do something in that area. That was the.
it looked like, when I drove by it recently, it looked like they had planted some pine trees.
They have planted some trees, the neighbors have planted some trees.
In that area, that past the corner house.
Correct.
So what, I guess I'm just trying, I thought that's where we were talking about, maybe some kind of, tree plantings, but maybe I'm.
That's the area.
That's
No,
the area. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so nothing down at the end, though. I just want to be clear, because.
Okay, I was just going off the agenda. My apologies. It was 64 Timber Glen Trail is the agenda item, so I was coming off the end of this.
Yeah,
Okay.
my understanding, and I know I've, been in contact with the property owner, I believe it's house number 1.
Right.
Up at the corner. I know after we kind of did the initial work in that, lower, it's a more of a pond kind of overflow, detention basin area. I know after we did some of that work, there was some concern over removing the trees,
Yep.
as some debris was left there. We have since gone in,
Right.
taken that out, completed restoration, spread some topsoil and seed anywhere where any of our equipment, created any ruts. And to my understanding, the neighbor was satisfied, at least the neighbor at number 1 was satisfied with the condition and how that has been left as far as restoration.
Gotcha.
My understanding was that the neighbor at 64, and I could be wrong, but my understanding was that the neighbor at 64 felt that additional trees needed to be planted and may have even taken it upon themselves to plant some trees and was seeking reimbursement for the trees that they planted on their own on town property.
And where would that be?
That's the house on the, kind of the end of the cul-de-sac.
Okay, so.
That is correct, right, in that area too. We're talking about two separate areas.
Okay, but so there was
correct.
some tree removal done behind 64?
Correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Tate is correct. If you recall, an email came into the board.
Right.
And the person was asking for reimbursement, some or all of the plantings that they put in. So for
Right.
this particular area, that is the item tonight to discuss, was specifically 64, and the board's willingness to cover some or all the cost.
I personally need a better look at it. I was confused. I thought we were more dealing with the upper portion of the street where we had heard from many of the residents, so I apologize.
And if I'm sorry if I wasn't clear about that, yes.
I know from 250 now, you can't see those homes when you drive up 250. You can't see through there.
So this would be a precedent if we started, paying for the cost of putting up trees but like you're saying, if it can't be seen, you have to have a really good reason to want to do that. I don't think you can just say, yes, we're going to start paying for people whose trees that were there before them fall down, that we're going to replace them. I don't know. I don't support that. I don't think it's a good precedent. You have to have a real good reason. It has to be a real good purpose. Why did it, it's on a property, the town owns it, it's going to be a huge sight distance issue, or it's going to be some impact to the property owners that's very severe, but if you can't even see it from 250, is this the way to start the first time to do this? I don't know. What do you say, Debbie? You're the one that brought it up. How do you?
When I went by today and looked at behind the 250, yeah, you can't see anything through at all now.
Right.
Because it has gotten
Foliage.
Foliage, right,
Yeah.
exactly. So I didn't go back in and look at what they've done I see it from their property, though. I just looked at it from on the other side, so I probably, I don't know what I know that they were putting those trees in.
Yes.
On their property.
And that's their right, it's their property.
Yep, absolutely.
But I believe the property owners had the trees planted on the town property.
Did they?
Not on their own property.
You can't do that, can you? That's not something that you.
Yeah, I mean, no, I was not aware until I, also saw the email, where they specified that they had hired someone to plant them on town property, and then were seeking the potential reimbursement.
No, that's not right. You have to have permission, at least, if you're going to do something like that.
Okay, what would you like to do there, Ms. Drawe?
I think that if it's on town, I didn't realize it was actually on the town property. I thought they were saying that they wanted to put it.
Sounds like you may not be prepared to do something this evening. Would you like to table it for 2 more weeks so that you can get a grasp on this?
Sure, we can table it, or we can. That's fine.
Your call. You're the lead on this one, so however you'd like to handle it, the board will, take whatever motion you may be willing to put on the table on this matter, whether it be to approve it, deny it, or to table it. So would entertain any motion that you'd like to put out.
Then I would like to, Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to table it so I can go over and walk and look at that, look at their,
Okay.
at where these trees are planted and what they see from their viewpoint.
Yeah,
Is there
I'll
a
second
second
the
to
table.
that?
Okay.
I'll second the table.
Okay. It's moved and seconded. I'll ask for a roll call vote on this matter to table.
Drawe.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
4 ayes.
All right, we'll move on to, and before I move on to item B, if anyone happens to be watching this evening, item E, that's tree removal at Rosebud Trail. That item has been withdrawn from this agenda this evening. So item E, tree removal at Rosebud Trail. So with that, we will move on to item B, as in boy. This is RIT, the Tait Preserve sidewalk waiver request, and I'll recognize Mr. Valentine.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. On Zoom this evening, we have Dan Brocht, who's been the lead from LaValle Associates, and then they have an RIT team, Marilyn, Kathleen, and Dave Brolt, I think are also joining us.
Welcome.
So as we are, or they are working through their planning board approval process, there were several conditions associated with that, one being the standard requirements to meet the town sidewalk policy. We met with them. They sent in a request. I've shared that with the board for their request for a sidewalk waiver. I also shared with them, and I think I shared with the board, that we did look at this property back several years ago when the Taits actually owned the property. At the time, it was a single-family residence. They went and installed their home on this property at that time. The town board did grant a waiver and then assess a residential sidewalk waiver fee at that current rate. Since then, this board has adopted a new sidewalk policy. We've upped some of our rates, and then a part of this is a conversion from a residential property to the RIT property now. So it's a commercial property with that. So the area, excuse me, and I'll highlight what is the 100 Old Penfield Road is their property that's active currently, that's under review and actually received approval from the planning board. Is a request for sidewalk waivers that goes down Old Penfield Road. If the board's aware, there is sidewalks on the other side of Old Penfield Road that was installed as part of the Ellison Heights development. And then we do have sidewalks on Penfield Road from Ellison Heights to that point, and then are working currently with the Dolomite Group to install sidewalks in the continuation of Penfield Road, and then we'd look at doing the piece on Gentles Market. This board discussed that earlier this year. So tonight, their team is here requesting a waiver from the installing sidewalks on their side. We've looked at them with our team. I know there's some steep drop-offs on that northern side if you're going down the road that could be problematic. One, elevation, two, clearing some trees out, and then there is existing sidewalks on the other side of the road. So I think it's staff's recommendation, to grant the waiver and then, have them pay into the sidewalk fund that could fund sidewalks on Penfield Road or somewhere else in the area. But would turn it over to Dan and his group if they want to share some additional comments, and obviously questions, comments from the board.
Absolutely. Well,
Thank you, Mark.
Welcome, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Dan Brock from Labella. Mark did a great job explaining our thoughts also. There are some steep grade changes, some steep fall-offs as it goes on the north side of Old Penfield Road. That's the only really reiteration or the item I'd like to really highlight is the grade doesn't really act well for a sidewalk on that side of the road. And RIT would, with this formal request, they've agreed to pay into the fund if this town board does approve the waiver.
Okay, great. The team members from RIT, any additional thoughts, comments that you would like to add to the record that we haven't discussed this evening?
Yes, this is Kathleen Bennett, attorney for RIT from Bond Shinnick King, and just wanted to make a note that, we understand, the sidewalk policy requires RIT to make a payment, and we would just request, the board taking note that this really isn't a commercial use, that RIT is making up the property. It's an educational use. RIT is a not-for-profit entity, and the property is being used for educational purposes. So if there's any consideration to be had with respect to what that fee is, we would respectfully ask that the board, keep in mind that RIT is a not-for-profit educational institution using the property for educational purposes. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. I appreciate that. Kathleen, I'd ask the question, what would you recommend that amount be that the town consider?
I certainly understand, we're probably not going to get the $500 that was charged, to the Taits for the residential use. Somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe $1,000 to $5,000, would be appreciated.
Okay. All right, I'll ask board any questions for anyone on the line, either from Labella or from RIT that you believe hasn't been entered into the record at this point. Okay. I'll ask the staff, is there anything that additional that you would like to add to the record that we haven't discussed on this matter this evening?
Yeah, so for the board's consideration, if it, according to our formula, typically the waiver fee is based on the construction cost. So we base it on what the current cost is with the county. They just bid it out. It's $47.50 a lineal foot, so we don't take into account clearing trees, everything else, just the concrete cost. I ran the numbers. They came up at 90-some thousand, but typically we do 50% as the waiver fee with a maximum cap of $10,000 for commercial property, $5,000 for residential property. So it depends on how the board interprets what RIT is. But the difference.
We don't have a category for nonprofit or.
That's up to the board's interpretation, of your policy. But basically, if you're a residential property of any single-family home residential property, it would be a $5,000 waiver fee. If you were not constructing them, it's a $10,000 waiver fee maximum cap for commercial property.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that input, Mr. Valentine. Board, what's your thoughts? What are you thinking?
I don't know, that's like an in-between there, we should probably have some other kind of category, because it's not a commercial, and it's not a residential, it's institutional, so somewhere in between there. I don't know if we want to go that route. We don't want to hold things up without a determination, but we should probably think about what kind of category you would want to create the.
How about if I help you with that category? How about if I help you with a motion that I would move that we assess a $5,000 fee to RIT for the sidewalks in this area, and I would entertain a second to that motion.
Second.
I'll ask, is there any further discussion on this matter?
Yeah, because you're talking that's residential then. And so is that.
You have a choice, and we call for the vote. You can either vote for it or not.
Well, no, that was the discussion time, so.
Okay.
So in discussion, if we go with the 5,000, so that would be a precedent if another institution came in and wanted to do the same thing, then they would look to what we just did now as a determination of what they could get for the sidewalk. So where does that go? This is starting something. And it's not like I'm against it, but we haven't done it before. So we'd be starting something new, and we have to realize that.
Okay.
Okay, so if it passes the 5,000, fine, but we should still look to create a category for future reference when this ever comes again.
And that could be.
And that could be the 5,000.
And that could be a condition of that motion.
Well, then I would like to move that.
Got a motion on the table.
Okay.
Got a current motion on the table. So if we're done discussing, we'll call that motion. If it passes, we move on. If it does not pass, then you have the ability to offer another motion.
Okay.
So with that on the table, there is a motion to assess a $5,000 charge to RIT for sidewalks for the waiver. And that item has been seconded. Is there further discussion on that particular matter? Okay. Then I'll ask for a roll call vote of that motion.
Drawe.
Aye.
Cole.
No.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
3 ayes, 1
Okay.
no.
So the waiver is granted, a fee of $5,000 assessed, and it's so noted that Councilperson Cole would like to have some work done in the category of something other than residential or commercial for sidewalks. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. Be well and be safe, folks.
You also.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to item C. This is tree removal at 12 and 14 Treetop Drive. Say that quick, real fast, Sue.
So as you can see, I'll I guess I'll start back up a little bit. We were contacted by the homeowners at both number 12 and number 14 Treetop Drive, concerned about some of the condition of the trees behind their property and kind of abutting their property. There's a town-owned strip of land through there. We went out and assessed the condition of those trees, and no surprise to us, they were dead ash trees. There are other trees kind of in the close proximity to those. However, the particular trees that they've noted have been confirmed to be dead ash trees. We have spoken to both property owners and gotten signed kind of release consents explaining to them what the expectation will be, that the trees, if approved, would be cut down. All of the debris would be neatly stacked and left on town property. It would not be hauled away. The stumps would not be ground or removed, and there would be no trees replanted in their place. Both homeowners have signed and agreed to that, and just looking for kind of the board's thoughts on that. Okay.
Sounds like you covered the bases we've kind of been going over each time these come up, so sounds like a good plan to me.
Yep, so you can see in the picture Mark just pulled up, there's actually a dead limb that's kind of snapped and already hanging out of that tree, as well as, while there is some vegetation and growth around, you can see a lot of the kind of bare branches that more or less have vines and shrubs kind of growing up and around them. And then the other picture, as you look up, it is a pretty large tree. This tree in particular would likely need to be hired out to have taken down safely.
I would say.
So some of the smaller, some of the smaller things around in the limbs that have come down, we can certainly clean up and do ourselves. But this, because of the proximity to the houses, would need to be likely need to be contracted.
Okay, board, questions for Mr. Tait on 12 and 14 Treetop Drive tree removal? If we're in agreement, is someone willing to make a motion of approval to move forward with that project?
I'll make a motion to move forward with tree removal behind 12 and 14 Treetop Drive as presented by Mr. Tait.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion, either from board or staff on that item? And as you indicated, all of that paperwork is in hand, been signed off by both property owners, and will be made part of the permanent record.
Correct.
Okay. All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll ask for a roll call vote of approval on the tree removal at 12 and 14 Treetop Drive.
Drawe.
Aye.
Cole. Aye. LaFountain.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
4 ayes.
All right, we'll move on to item D. This is 37 Pewter Rock. Mr. Tait, you're still the star of the show.
Thank you. So similar to the last item, we were contacted by the homeowner. There is a dead ash tree on the kind of town-owned portion behind this particular property. Unfortunately, a limb did come out of the tree and actually hit the homeowner's son. Fortunately, he is okay. He was not injured, but that was certainly worrisome for the family itself. Again, dead ash tree that they would like to have taken down for obvious reasons. Again, we've had them sign off, explain to them that the tree would be removed. If approved, the tree would be removed. The debris, there is no place to leave the debris in this particular location. So this debris would actually be taken out and removed. However, the stump would not be ground, and we would not replant or replace the tree. They were agreeable to that and again signed off and have that for the record.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Discussion on this item.
Can I just-
for Pewter Rock.
May I just ask one question?
Sure.
That tree, it's entirely on
Town property.
Town property,
yes.
yeah, that's what I meant. Okay.
I know the aerial kind of shows a few on
Yep.
theirs, but this one's actually further back where the mouse is. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Additional questions or comments, board or staff?
Looks like a big tree hired out. Is that the plan? Or is that-
This one we should be able to do because we can actually drop the tree toward the pond.
There's room? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion on this item, a motion to approve tree removal at 37 Pewter Rock.
So moved.
I'll second it. It's fine.
Moved by Councilperson Cole, second by Councilperson Drawe. Seeing no further discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote of approval for this.
Drawe.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
4 ayes.
All right, again, for the record, item E, tree removal at Rosebud Trail. That matter has been withdrawn. We'll move on to item F. We have tree removal at 47 Miyah Drive.
So it may sound like a broken record, but we were contacted by the homeowner at 47 Miyah Drive as well. The trees that they're concerned about in particular are kind of to the south of their property. There is a kind of a shallow swale ditch line through, abutting that development from the property to the south, Welch's Farm Market. There are some dead ash trees along the upper kind of bank on the town property and portion. There are some within her own yard that I believe she's going to be taking care of as well. But her request, there are some that are still alive and living, so we're not clear cutting all of them, but there are a few select dead trees through there. Again, have explained to her that if the board is agreeable to this, that the expectation, and I know there, as the development was going in, some homeowners had dumped some debris and brush there, so there are some piles already. But when we actually, if we do the work, we'll see and come to an agreement with the homeowner if that debris can be left. I know she was, had mentioned the idea and was supportive of leaving, some for kind of wildlife itself and to promote habitat. But I also want to make sure that it doesn't cause us future problems for any drainage work along there. So, she does understand that no matter what, that stump would not be ground or removed. We would not be replanting or replacing the trees. If we were to take them down, it just kind of a decision as to whether the material is left or removed. We do have access. We could bring it out and kind of load it along the side of 250 where there is a pull-off by that pond, the southern pond area. But again, that's something that I'll work out with the property owner if they, if this board is agreeable to that.
And once again, you have that all documented in a sign-off from the property owner?
I do not have the sign-off from them yet, but I have been talking to them. This just came in Friday morning.
Okay.
So haven't had a chance to get that back from them yet.
Okay. So the board could do one of two things. We could hold this until you got that paperwork, or we could make a condition of approval with moving forward that sign-off would have to be in hand with all of the understandings as to what would be done or not done.
Certainly. And yeah, and I certainly wouldn't want to move forward and do anything without that in hand anyway.
Okay. All right. Board, for that one, how would you like to handle that, either to table it or to approve it conditionally that Mr. Tait gets all of the proper sign-offs?
I'll make a motion to approve it with the condition that the sign-off is obtained by Mr. Tait to do the tree removal at 47 Miyah Drive.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second, moved by Councilperson Ocken, second by Councilperson Drawe. Seeing no further discussion on that item, I'll ask for a roll call vote of approval with the condition of documentation in hand and signed off.
Drawe.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
4 ayes.
Okay, let's move on to item G. We're still with Mr. Tait. Item G is the Harris Whalen Tennis Court resurfacing bid results that we had received here, I believe, last week. And Mr. Tait, lead us through the discussion, if you would, please.
Sure, thank you. So over the past few weeks, we've gone out to seek sealed bids from contractors to basically strip the existing surface, fill any cracks, and then go through, replace the post, so all of the keys are matching, all of the nets are matching, and then go through and resurface and restripe the tennis courts with the ability to also have pickleball courts overlaid on top of them to make them flex courts at the hard surface courts at Harris Whalen Park. The bids have come in. Super seal coating was the low bid at $49,300. We did put a contingency into that bid as part of the estimates, and Super Seal is a local company actually right in Penfield. They've done a number of other courts for us before, and come highly recommended. They were able to come in and give us an estimate, just taking a look at the court to determine exactly what may need to be done, and estimate what the approximate length of cracks that would need to be filled would be. So we included that number within this and then shared that with all of the bidders as well, that it's estimated to be approximately 700, but as you remove the existing surface, you may find smaller cracks underneath that aren't visible currently. So with that said, we did put a contingency if there are any cracks above and beyond the first 700 that are included in the lump sum price, what that price per foot would be. They were also the lowest for that price as well. So no matter what, even if it goes above and beyond, their price would be the lowest out of all of the bidders. Again, they have done work for us before. I believe they may have even been the ones that did that tennis court the last time it was resealed. I know they've done work over, I believe, at Greenwood Park, as well as a number of other hard surface courts within the town. So, with that said, myself and my parks foreman, Tim Masterton, have both reviewed this, talked to them, feel comfortable with awarding that and using them for those services, and have even had conversations that if it were awarded, to make sure that it would be able to fit into their busy season this year, given that they are weather dependent and kind of have a short time frame to be able to do this work, and have assured us that they will make sure that that happens.
Okay.
And I think I asked you, Mr. Supervisor, last time these were done, you mentioned like 15 years ago, I think, or longer?
I think I said 15 years, but I think it's been longer than.
It probably has been.
Yeah,
It's needed.
Based on the best information I had, but I believe Mr. Tait, had indicated that I was probably generous with 15. It was probably a bit more than that, so.
Now, we know a lot of tennis players will be a lot more happy with fixing this. I've had people ask me about it, and I think I told you and Tim, that a tennis instructor, he did it at the high school and so on like that. He said the cracks and everything, you guys got to fix it. And I'm so glad that you're doing it this year, because it was last summer I was getting those comments. So
We've been spending quite a bit of time and effort doing a lot of playground replacements in the past years. We're just about caught up, and really the only remaining playground to be replaced is the Harris Whalen lower playground that's actually right next to these courts. However, it's actually still in pretty good shape. So we felt that this would be a more appropriate use of that money to, as we're getting questions and want to say concerns, but requests from
Yes.
different residents and patrons of the park to do such. So not only will it provide a new surface, but it'll also, fill those cracks, fill all the bird baths within that, water sitting on the court certainly doesn't help anything. So overall, it will help extend the life of the actual court itself.
And I'll put my Andy Moore hat on, and he would ask at this point, is this part of the 2021 budget, these monies?
It is, yes.
Okay. All right. Board would entertain, if you're satisfied with what we've heard from Mr. Tait and the fact that we have 3 bids, that we were able to get the lowest one being responsible, meeting all the specifications, would entertain a motion of approval to authorize a resolution to move forward with awarding a bid to Super Seal Coating LLC.
So moved. I move that we go forward with Super Seal.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilperson Cole, second by Councilperson Ockenden. Seeing no further discussion on this matter, I'll ask for a roll call vote of approval.
Drawe.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
4 ayes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tait, and thank you, Mr. Masterton. This will be a very good improvement to that site overall. Okay. Next item, item H, RG&E's request for a gas easement regulator station at 1164 Whalen Road. We did have discussion on this at our last work session. I think Mr. Tait was going to go back and take a look at a couple of items. Originally, if you recall, the parcel that they were looking at, I won't have the exact, maybe I will. The exact dimension that they were looking for was approximately a 25 by 60 foot easement. Where they were proposing it, they had hunched it over next to 1176 Whalen Road. I think Mr. Tait had indicated that there might be an opportunity, and I think this is a combination of Mr. Tait and Mr. Valentine, so I don't want to exclude Mr. Valentine from this discussion. But I think the discussion was if we go back and take a look at that, there may be an opening there that might in fact accommodate that easement, minimize taking down trees, and moving the proposed substation further away from 1176 Whalen Road. So with that, Mr. Tait, give us an update.
Sure, thank you. So I have spoken to the engineer with RG&E on this a number of times.
Who's that again?
Brittany Tait.
Okay, got it.
Spoken to her quite a few times on this, and we've actually, bringing up some of the board's concerns about tree removal and proximity to some of the neighboring houses. There actually is in between the kind of larger pines, just to the east of the actual entrance into the neighborhood, and where the wooded area actually starts, there is an opening that is essentially cleared out and would likely fit for the needs of that substation. There is a potential that a few limbs may need to be trimmed back, but would certainly cut down on the actual number of trees that would need to be taken out or completely removed. This location would also kind of give a little more separation to the actual creek that goes through, or the drainage way that goes through there. So it would also help us, whenever we come through and do another drainage project in there, we're not concerned about how close to their equipment, our machinery and equipment actually is. And then from that location, I don't know, Mark, if you can just kind of pan directly across the road. There's really no houses that would be looking directly at it, whereas when it was originally proposed further east, it would be, not only next to the one house, but also directly across from another. At least with this location, it's a lot less likely, if even at all, visible or noticeable from a front door, front window of any neighboring property.
So I noticed when I went by there today, just to take another look at that area, and it's shown on the photograph here before us, that that area is mowed, and I'm guessing that area is mowed as a result of the park district or special district that we have for Country Club Plaza?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so today, that is being mowed by our current contractor?
Correct.
Okay. And I think you touched on it, and I just want to make sure that I heard correctly, that one of the items that we heard from RG&E's rep was that wanting to make sure that wanted to make sure that the unit itself wasn't subject to any type of a flooding or anything like that. That satisfies at that location?
Yep, so, putting an above-ground structure at this location would be buffered by, trees on, basically the east and the west. You would be able to, maybe faintly see a portion of it as you're leaving the neighborhood, kind of through, there is a little opening, further down Saybrook Drive if you're trying to kind of peek out, but would be fairly minimal, if even really noticed. And then same thing, again, the neighboring properties would not.
Mark, could you spin it clockwise a little bit? I was thinking that, yeah, thank you. So as I look to the north, there's quite a distance before you hit that first house.
Yeah, it's a few hundred
as
feet.
you're coming off Whalen north. So we're not moving it away from one house and putting it close to another house. There is a pretty sizable area there that acts as a buffer.
So that, the house that you see on your right is the closest house. They have quite a bit of landscaping and trees around theirs.
Yep.
So
Okay.
to see that distance and even through some of the other trees, I think it would blend in fairly well.
Okay. And as a reminder, again, the intent of this substation, as a result of the work that has been done, there is a substation further to the west on Whalen Road that would, this substation would be replacing and provide a bigger main for the area and provided better functionality for the gas service overall.
That is correct.
Okay, all right. Board, thoughts about the original plan versus the thought about this other location here a little bit further west?
Mr. Supervisor, may I ask a question?
Sure.
On that, in that opening, is that about, because I went by too, I can't, is that about 25 feet, that opening? That you're showing in the
Roughly,
location?
like I said, what they're looking for an easement, and they certainly don't need a clear-cut, box, 25 by 60. But, their equipment will kind of just tuck within that. They need more for just access to be able to walk around. I believe that area is, more than sufficient. It may even be a little bit more than 25 feet, depending on, what particular branches are sticking out of the trees. Like you said, it may require a little bit of minimal trimming if a branch is sticking out a little bit too far, but certainly wouldn't be taking out nearly as many trees as if it were to, be installed further to the east.
Well, I certainly like the movement there to that location versus closer to the neighbor on, where it was, we were looking over by 1157, I believe.
Right, I agree. I mean, it's further away from the house in question, and it takes less trees down, so that's a win both ways. That's what you want.
Okay.
I agree with the new location. I like it better. Guess it still begs the question of above ground or below ground I'm partial to below ground personally.
Yep.
That would be my preference, but I definitely like the location much better.
So if this board, so I don't have either an RG&E rep here with us this evening, but I would ask both Mr. Valentine, Mr. Tait, if this board asked to have this as an underground installation to minimize the view even further in this area, would that create any problems?
I don't know that it would be feasible or would be able to install a below-ground structure in this particular location because of the water levels.
Okay.
Yeah, didn't she mention that last time, that it was a
That's- I mean-
concern? It wasn't a definite, but it would be a concern.
Yes.
We've got the lower end of our pond, and actually I'm more supportive of being further west, because our pond is kind of on this lower end over here, and then the creek area runs up this section, and then the pond is on that side. So this actually gets it away from the pond, but you'd still have very high groundwater in that area. But, I mean, they could provide a sketch of what an above-ground station looked like, but I think, tucking it back in the trees, and I believe they offered to paint it, similar
Color
in
it so it would blend
green
in.
color, and, maybe there's some supplemental, couple of arborvitaes or something if once deemed needed at the back end of it. You need to keep the front open so you can get access to it off of Whalen Road, but if there is some concern from the neighbors on the backside, maybe, I think we did that on the board did on the Atlantic Avenue station, get it in, get it up, and then they agreed to up to 4 or 5, whatever, some additional plantings if needed, afterwards, get it in and then assess what's needed, and then, have come back and then do a couple of arborvitaes or some evergreens or something to buffer that further.
And how many feet back from the road, from that, where the road is, again, with that setback?
The easement they were requesting, I believe, was 25 feet wide and 60 foot long.
I
Right.
ballparked it here in that blue box is what I tried to
Right.
ballpark what's the 25 by 60 is here, and then, we can zoom out to see the proximity of the
Right.
nearest home over here, and then
That's it, the
Is
blue
there-
box, right.
that's what I tried to, it's not exact, but at least to kind of approximate, and then as Eric was sharing, the exit view is not at anybody's front door in this location, and it also gets away from our pond, which the lower end of it's kind of in this general area on that. And I go back to the street view if that's more helpful.
Well, I would, if you want a motion, I would move that we accept the second recommendation.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that, because I do like the revised location, and I think is,
Moved by Councilperson Cole, second by Councilperson Drawe. Further discussion, Mr. Ockenden?
Yeah. So as far as future plantings of arborvitaes, is that something we should build into a motion, or is that kind of left at the good will of our relationship with RG&E, or?
I mean, I would add something, say, plantings up to, so at least they know what they're getting into. If they're not necessary, it can be a, staff's estimation or something afterwards, or, you want to have us go out there and assess it once it's in, but it's kind of hard to know until they trim the trees, get the station in and everything else, and then, but I think we did something similar, up to 5 arborvitaes or, pine
Sure, I
trees
mean,
as needed, and
I
if they're
think
not
we need-
needed, they're not needed, but at least I think then RG&E knows what.
It's a good point. I mean,
There's
I'll
some
withdraw
expectation.
my motion and revise it to say, I make a motion that we approve the second recommendation, new recommendation, with the understanding that the staff, town staff will look at opportunities for arborvitae or shrubbery or whatever to.
I believe when they did, I know a few years back, RG&E, Brittany in particular, requested an easement on one of our town property up on Penfield Road.
Correct.
And as part of that, as we were reviewing the actual easement documentation, a letter was provided kind of guaranteeing that if at any point in time plantings were determined or needed to be installed, you know,
Better.
at the town's request, that they would do that. And that was just a kind of a letter that, you know,
Sure.
written on behalf of RG&E. You know, I think that's something that,
So
rather
we
than
asked
including it
for
in
that to be
the
included.
resolution, we can certainly,
Okay.
you know, request that letter for the,
Do you like
you know,
that?
if
Request
come.
that letter?
Yeah.
Okay, so, resolution.
Okay, so Councilperson Cole revised her original motion. I'll ask Councilperson Drawe, do you second that revised?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Second.
very good. So just so that everyone is clear, as the motion was stated, the second alternative, it is an approximate 25 by 60 foot as highlighted by RG&E, and that there will be wording as it relates to plantings, consistent with what we have done in the past with RG&E, so that in the event that either the town or the residents that come back, the town has the ability to work with RG&E for additional plantings. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote of approval.
Drawe.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
4 ayes.
Okay, this brings us, and we're going to mix it up a little bit because we're going to invite Mr. Valentine to the table. This is item I, request to install a fountain in a town pond adjacent to 43 Miyah Drive. And I see Mr. Valentine's got the information before us, and if you will, kind of walk us through.
Sure, and first, my apologies to Mr. Miller. He was going to join us this evening. I believe I sent him a bad link. I got contacted by RG&E, RIT earlier, too many acronyms this evening. RIT earlier, I was able to get it out to them. I was, during the meeting, trying to send him a new link. He may have struggled to get in, so my apologies to him if he was unable to get in this evening. But I had shared with the letter with the board. He is now the resident at 43. Had some concerns about the drainage that goes to the pond that's there. It does have an overflow that does discharge across Fairport 9 Mile, but he just said that there's not a lot of flow through there. It's picking up neighborhood drainage. He just said it's getting kind of murky. He does understand it's on town property. He does understand it's our land. But his request was to put a fountain bubbler, some sort of system in there at his cost, at his electric, just to kind of agitate the pond and hopefully, you know, improve the aesthetic of that area. I know we had some initial conversations with town council on Friday about this location.
Thank you for bringing that up, Mark.
He shared, you know, obviously, we do have insurance concerns levels that, you know, he would, if the board was so inclined to approve this, he would have to meet certain insurance requirements, and I think we've also done some other, say, hold harmless agreements. I believe we've got a light in a pond off of Glenbrook, and I believe we have an agreement there that, you know, what happens there, that obviously it, you know, holds the town harmless against any sort of insurance claim on that. But he said he was joining us this evening. I think my error of giving him the bad link, he's not here tonight to answer any questions of the board, so if there is additional things, we could table it, you know, come back to his, or get additional information.
This sounds fair. Yeah. I'd move to table because the person that's interested wasn't able to join us tonight.
So, and that's my fault, so, no, nothing on his end, but if the board has additional thoughts, comments, questions, I can circle them back to him. So if you need additional materials, additional items, I can work on getting those in the meantime, so you'd have everything you need, you know, at your next work session.
I'll ask board, in addition to what we heard from Mark, the letter that did in fact come in from the Miller family, anything additional that the board would like to see, will certainly work. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have reached out to our insurance people to at least get a sense of what we're looking at from an insurance requirement. First blush, was that probably not something that would be very expensive, but it would, in fact, provide the town with some assurance that if there was any problems or issues, that we would be at least covered, protected.
Mark, can I ask one question?
Sure.
Is that maybe I missed it, is it strictly for ambiance, the fountain?
No,
Will it help?
Yeah, I mean, it's a normal stormwater
You'll keep
pond. We don't, as a town, install fountains or bubblers. You know, people do in private ponds. If it gets into, it's not getting enough oxygen or doesn't get enough flow through that, a lot of times it'll turn into an anaerobic issue,
Right.
so whether either algae or smells. So either sometimes if you have a fountain to aerate it, one, it'll move it around a little bit, two, it gets some oxygen into it, so it can help with one, smell, or two, keep the algae from growing too much. I didn't see exactly. Do we have one in this one here? Oh, you're talking the ones in the front. Yes, get there. So yeah, Jim just brought up, these are on private property, but if you go down 250, there's two homes on Bainbridge that have little kind of fountains and bubbles
Yes.
in the front. I can try to pull it up on the street view, but those are on private property. These two homes, you can see them right off at 250 as you go towards north towards Webster. Cranberry Cove is on the left.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me just get there. So I'm expecting it would be something similar. I could ask if he's got something in mind, if this is a tall fountain,
Yeah.
or he's just looking for, that kind of bubbler to.
And Mark, to give the board a reference point, what would you estimate that the depth of that pond that's behind 43 Miyah Drive, roughly?
5 feet plus or minus. Typically, we try to get the deep pools of the pond below 3 feet. So if it's less than 3 feet, you typically see cattail growth and other vegetation. So you try to at least get it to 5. Just in order to keep the excessive amount of cattails growing. As Jim's sharing, you can see on Bainbridge, again, this one's on private property, but as part of the original development, they've got a little bit of a bubbler fountain here in the front, and then same thing on the other side, and that resident, again, has a little bubbler fountain that's on private property. But I'm assuming that's something similar to what he's looking at, and in between now and the next meeting, I can ask for some clarification if I saw what they had. That's exactly what I want to do with mine, and, it's just enough to kind of keep the water moving and agitating and kind of doesn't let it settle.
Right, that seems like a good, I just didn't know if you were looking, when they were talking.
That's something I can ask as a clarification, so at least come to the next meeting,
Sure.
I think
he's
the
got
other
that.
one, the other reference point that I think some of the board may have seen is that Water Song right there at the corner of 5 Mile Line Road. That first house in, either them or their neighbors, they've got a fountain / bubbler, a little bit more grandiose, I think, than what this is. But they use that again just to help keep the water moving and minimize things being as stagnant and either smelly or again, just keeping the water moving.
I'm sorry, Mark, did you say we have a town pond where we've allowed this in the past, or we haven't?
I'd say we do not.
Okay.
This is not something we offer on our ponds and everything else, so this would be, kind of a first on ours.
Okay,
For
gotcha.
somebody asking for it. We have allowed, somebody has wanted to use a light. There's an amber light that blinks dimly at nighttime that keeps geese away. We've kind of done that on a investigative process that they've signed off on with the board. Again, that was put in privately with an agreement, so it's not town-owned, but we do have agreements for that. But we don't have any fountains, and that's not something the town, typically we don't have power in that area.
Right.
So it'd be up to the private property owner to provide power, provide the equipment. But if the board was agreeable, then at least make sure we've got the insurances in hand, protect the town, as well as the agreement, and the understanding what it's there for, everything else. But
Okay.
between now and then, I'll clarify what his thoughts are on kind of the fountain, the bubbler, and then, hopefully in 2 weeks, I'll put it back on and then have some more answers on that end of it.
Okay, very good. I think there's a motion on the table by Councilperson Cole to table this matter. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, been moved by Councilperson Cole, second by Councilperson Ockenden. This matter will be tabled. We'll get a little bit additional information. Also in that time, vet out the insurance component, provide that input, feedback back not only to the board, but also to the applicant himself. And then while could we go back, and this is just more for, I think, a clarification for at least myself and maybe the rest of the board. Could we go back to 43 Miyah Drive, Mark, if you wouldn't mind? So, so as I take a look at that property line running along 39, and it appears as though, and maybe it's just the GPS data or maybe the angle as you start to make that curve, but that property line looks like it's laid right across the building itself.
39 is very close. I know we have sent a letter to 27 in the past. That's one of the ones that had sent a letter requesting to this board to keep it there. We sent him a letter saying he had to move it back off of town property, so I know that 27 had to move theirs back off. I believe 23, there's a bench on town property. I think we owe them a letter as well to, it's one thing if they're walking back there. I think it's another if they have structures on it. We can look at 39 as the supervisor shared. These lines are not exact, but 27, you can definitely, it's not, usually we're plus or minus 5 or 10 feet, not that distance, but we have sent a letter, and I believe 27 is moved, to my understanding. So this is, I think, a 2018 aerial photo that we're looking at.
Great. All right. All right. Do we call a roll call vote on that, Sue?
Drawe.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
4 ayes.
Okay. That brings us to the end of the agenda for this evening. The June 23rd, 2021 work session will stand adjourned at 9:22 p.m. Thank you for everyone that participated, and thank you to Penfield TV. I think Dave Townsend and Ryan downstairs. Thank you for everything. Everyone, please be well and be safe.